It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Good Monday morning. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. Jim Meehan from the Spokesman-Review, Richard Fox, TV analyst on Gonzaga games, SWX, KHQ, Root Sports. Busy week last week for the Zags. They had 4 games in 8 days over the last 2 Saturdays. They're no longer in the WCC. They are now, they're not going to join the revamped Pac-12. They're in the NBA now, Foxy. They're starting to just play NBA schedules. And even in an NBA arena at the Intuit Dome. So anyway, they went 3-1 in that stretch. They won all 3 of their conference games, lost to UCLA, which we talked about in the last pod. Number 6 in the net, number 6 in Ken Palm. Don't know where they're at in the AP rankings. They'll probably stay somewhere close around 19, where they were a week ago. In the brackets I looked up, and admittedly, these were a couple days old. 3rd seed in the West, Jerry Palm, last on the 3 line. So they're, teetering between 3 and 4. Joe Lunardi had them as a 4 in the West. And another one I looked at had them as a 3 in the West. So all those things that we talked about, still staying out West, advantage of being in a geographic area where their fans can go and still getting a high seed, all still there. No damage in terms of the UCLA loss. UCLA is in the top 5, 6 seeds too. So anyway, Foxy, we'll talk basketball. We'll talk about this week coming up, and we'll talk about some of the individuals that are kind of rising in the last week or so for the Zags. But that first week, our first game of the week was Monday night against Pepperdine, and you were down in Malibu.
Yeah.
A very interesting game. Did not expect it to be like it turned out in the second half. Zags come out, scored 50, I want to say, in the first half. Or 40, something like
50,
that.
50, yep.
Yeah, and then, guarded very well, I thought. Second half, defense took a little bit of a snooze. They woke up Pepperdine's guys, Mo Odom, a Pacific transfer, the point guard. I don't know what he had, 24 or something in the second half. Jackson Olvera, he was hot throughout the game. I think he set his career high by like 10 or 11 points. He was in the mid-20s as well. And just another slow start to the second half. Got it back under control at the end, executed pretty well in crunch time, got a few stops, gave up 50 points to Pepperdine, picked last in the league in that second half. I think that served as a wake-up call eventually for the games that followed. But what caught your eye first half to second half calling that game?
Well, it felt it didn't help Pepperdine that Odom got a couple fouls. I thought that Pepperdine, for whatever reason, sat him for way too long. And you could see the difference in having him on the floor, even to start the game, but certainly in that second half. And, I always scratch my head when coaches do that, especially when you're that level of an underdog. What do you have to lose? I mean, he's, by far their best ball handler. Very difficult to keep Odom in front. We saw that in the second half. And then he got going. I mean, I thought, I've seen him play a number of times now, having called the Pacific games, usually, both the home and away for Gonzaga for the last couple of years. And it's the best I've seen him play. He's really improved his shot, I think closer to 40%, 39, I think going into that game anyway. He had been around 30% his first couple of years, certainly last year at Pacific. And it was the first time that you saw Gonzaga for a prolonged stretch just seemed really disorganized and almost tentative offensively. I mean, Nembhard with 6 turnovers, a couple of those, if not 3 of them, just really uncharacteristic, just forcing the basketball. It felt like he was, he's always, it appears he's always looking to pass on his drives. And he's his secondary, scoring is a secondary instinct for him. But he does a pretty good job, I think, balancing those two things out. I thought against Pepperdine, it didn't feel like he was really looking to score very much, at least early in the game. And then just Ryan just struggled. 4 of 15. He started having to put the shots up, didn't really have a rhythm, 0 of 5 from 3. And Ryan will do that from time to time. But you just don't see him struggle shooting and struggling taking care of the ball. And, Gonzaga with 13 turnovers. I mean, they do a good job, Jim. Protecting the ball, so when they get 13 turnovers, it kind of stands out, right? I mean, I think a lot of teams would take that every night. Michael really looked uncomfortable. We've talked about that before. I think I can't imagine what the emotions are going back, even though he's just there a year. There's a lot of emotion there, and he certainly didn't seem like himself. And I think maybe we were building up to a game like that anyway. He hasn't played very well since Connecticut, but I think you got to tip your hat to Pepperdine. Obviously Odom, and then Oliveira, that freshman, did not look like a freshman. I mean, honestly looked like he was a junior. Really impressive. Averaged 6 a game, got 27 on the Zags. I'm sure a lot of folks listening to us are probably groaning and saying Gonzaga always gives up career highs to guys. Well, they certainly did against Oliveira. The Pepperdine did a good job on the glass. They're not a good rebounding team. Only lost that by 3. But ultimately it was Huff in the first half that I think helped Gonzaga build the lead. And then Ike was really good in the second half. And I thought Greg has put together a really good stretch here now starting. His scoring isn't maybe there every night. But the second chance points, his defense, his ability, he just knows how to play. I think we'll talk about him starting, but I thought he was good down at Pepperdine too.
I give Pepperdine credit. You get down 18 at home. It wasn't a full house. It was about 2/3 full.
Not even close, yeah.
And I would say maybe 50-50-ish almost crowd-wise, if not a tad in Gonzaga's favor. So the building wasn't, students were gone. The building wasn't, like when Gonzaga usually plays on the road and it's, just amped up and crazy. That new coach there, Ed Schilling, I know they're picked last. I know their record isn't great, but you can see that he's on it. And he got those guys to play extremely hard in the second half when they were down 18, 20 points, which is at that point, you're thinking, man, do they just fold the tent and get beat 30? So I have to give a lot of credit to what he did. The Zags did lose their focus and finally got it back in those final minutes. But I give Pepperdine a little that coach credit. I think he knows what he's doing, and I think he's going to give some people some fits. I think they won their next conference game, pretty easily. And I want to say, didn't they? Well, no, that's LMU, but I give that coach credit. Ed Schilling's doing a nice job there. Let's move on to Portland. And you got the return of Ben Gregg to the starting lineup. We've been calling on that for the last couple of weeks on the pod. We called on that last year on the pod for several weeks before it happened. So Benny's back in the lineup. Obviously, puts up the numbers that Benny does. I think he had 9 boards, 7 points, 4 steals, if I remember right. I mean, he just played great all around. Best part of that whole night, Michael came off the bench, had a good night, 15 rebounds, 5 boards. They both ended up guarding that Austin Rapp, a 6'10" kid from Australia, Portland's highest scorer, about 14 and a half a game. Younger brother of the kid who played at Wazoo, Pat Rapp, years ago. And I thought both guarded him very well. And I thought EK was part of that, with when to switch, how to cover the screen coverage out front. I thought he was a big part of that as well. You kind of see when Benny gets in there, all the stuff he brings off the bench, he brings to the starting lineup as well. The emotion and just the intensities on the floor every other time down the court. But to get both those guys going at the same time at that 4 position with what they've got elsewhere in the starting 5, I think it made a difference that night and will for the rest of the year if it stays that way.
Yeah, last year we talked about just balancing the rotation. because for the first half of the year they had Huff and Greg coming off the bench, right? So
Yeah.
There was a lot of flexibility. Then they balanced it out as best they could with having Dusty and Huff both come off the bench. Your freshmen, and depending on the situation, you could bring in a guard or a wing and bring in a post. There's something about Ben that balances out Gonzaga when he's on the floor. And he's going to be, he hasn't shot the ball well, admittedly. And, certainly Michael was supposed to be a guy who could stretch you out. But I think Ben's just he feels like a better fit next to Graham a little bit. He's got more size than Michael does too. Michael's certainly a better athlete and plays really hard. But now you're going 6'9" with EK, 6'10" with Greg. You've got, battle with big wing. You've got a little bit more size than you did with Michael. And Ben does a good job. He holds up defensively, switching out to smaller guys. I think he's really learned how to do that, despite maybe not having the best physical gifts. So I like that. I think we've been looking for that for a while. I suspect it probably would have happened at Pepperdine, but that would have been a really difficult thing to do to Michael. So, I mean, I don't know what to say about the game, really. I mean, we called that, and that first, I don't know how many minutes it was. Certainly the first 5 minutes, and not the first 10 minutes. I mean, it was very difficult to watch Portland. I like the rap kid, but you could see he's a skilled forward, power forward. But Gonzaga's size really bothered him. He maybe had 1 or 2 post touches. Everything else, he took 8 shots. 6 of those were from 3. I mean, he just had to settle. And for the most part, they were all contested. And of the 2 he made, I know one of them was over Ben, who was, plastered on him. So
yeah, was that the big rainbow?
Yeah.
I think it hit the rafters before it went in.
Yeah. But I like the rotation change. I credit Michael. It's difficult to get demoted in that way. I thought his response was really good. I mean, only 18 minutes, but 15 rebounds. His activity level, still struggling to score 1 of 7, only 5 points. But I think sometimes when you're struggling as a player, or even in any sport as an athlete, sometimes the best thing to do is just simplify it. Keep it simple, stupid. And for him, I think right now it's, look, Mike, the offense, you're struggling to score. I know you knocked down a couple against LMU, but up into that Portland game, the offense is just not clicking for you right now, bud. Just play hard. Be a beast on the glass. I thought he was good defensively. Do the things you can control. In other words, you can't necessarily control if the shot goes in or out, but you can't control your effort. You can't control how you rebound. And I just thought that was a really good approach for a kid who just came off of playing really poorly at Pepperdine, got demoted. And then the last thing I'd say before I hear from you, Jim, is they finally started making some shots. I mean, from 3. I mean, 11 of 24 in the game, including 5 of 9 in the second half. This is after I forget what they were at Pepperdine, but what was that? That was 2 of
15.
2 of 15. I mean, we've had a lot of these, it feels like. And against Portland, I think the lid came off a little bit. And then we saw that kind of continue at LMU. And then, I guess I do have one more thing to say. I was really impressed with Dusty Stromer.
Yeah.
It's not that he was hunting his offense. He just took the opportunities. He's more assertive when he had a chance to score. I think at times he catches it to pass. He hasn't caught it with the intent to search out, do I have an opportunity to shoot now or attack the defense? He's very much a ball mover. That's what he's been, and a spot-up shooter. It's the first time I could remember where he put it down, got to the hoop, and I thought that carried over to LMU too. He had a couple nice drives there. So, it's oddly enough, man, as bad as that game was to call, and it was ugly, we might be looking back on that Portland game and saying that they uncorked a couple things. They changed their lineup, and maybe that's the turning point for Dusty a little bit.
Yeah, and they started shooting it better, which has carried over now a couple of games. Foxy, if you're restless at night like I am at times,
I am.
and I know you are because you have a new puppy. So
that's right. That's right.
We'll probably start a puppy segment at some point.
I'll give an update before we end. I'm happy to do that.
But if you're restless, then you really need to get some winks. Pop in the tape of the first 14, 15 minutes of first half Gonzaga and Portland. it will put the eyelids down. It will close things up for you. You get some sleep. It was just look, the Zags played pretty well defensively, and that can't dismiss that. They were on their assignments. They made it tough for Rapp, all those things. But Portland's offense just had a miserable, stretch there. They couldn't hit shots even if they were open, and turnovers just felt like every other time down the floor. So anyway, I think Rapp was option one. It didn't seem like they could find option B or plan B or C till the second half, when they kind of looked more like you expected from Portland. So anyway, let's move on, Foxy. I can't tell you. I kind of wish you had to do this as well. I can't tell you how excited I was to get on a plane and fly to LAX.
Yeah.
At 6 o'clock Saturday morning. I flew with your partner, Greg Heister, on that flight, and it's been so long since I'd been to LA. I think it was 3.5 days, to go back to go to the same hotel and be back there. What a thrill for me, Foxy, to do that. And no, I'm just kidding. It's part of the job. I still can't quite get why it's not a Pepperdine LMU road trip, but I think the UCLA game, obviously. Well, UCLA game being the Saturday before conference open for the Zags was probably the reason. But anyway, I am on a first name basis with the shuttle driver for the Marriott down there. Good guy, fun guy. As far as the game down there, they played LMU Saturday night, and just seemed to be the Zags. I think they're just on a general uptick. Their offense is kind of humming along. The three ball has fallen, which is making everything else run smoother. And defensively, that's the biggest thing I noticed. Since giving up 50 in that second half to the Waves, they have guarded pretty darn well here and shut people down. Caleb Battle told me afterwards that Fuey really got on him to play better defense. It sounds like that was probably a team-wide message after Pepperdine, and they did play much cleaner, much tighter. Graham, I thought, had a couple of very good nights defensively in the middle. There were some slips in the second half. LMU scored it a little easier, but it was never when the game. I mean, the Zags were up 27 at some point, got down to 17. Are you seeing anything defensively that encourages you, or is it just caliber of competition isn't what they've seen in the non-conference? Is it hard to judge it, or do you like where they're headed that way?
I think two things can be true. Certainly, it appears that they are more dialed in right now defensively than they have been in some period of time, a couple weeks, 3 weeks. And you can just see that Gonzaga's size up front and their length on the perimeter. And with Ryan's, he's not the longest kid in the world, but he's he's quick, good hands, and he just knows how to play. It's made teams really uncomfortable. And they've been playing the bottom half of the league to start here. So it's been a bit of a favorable schedule until they get to WSU over the weekend. And sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes the schedule gods kind of help you out and give you a stretch here where you get to play, but maybe not play the top end of your conference. And maybe, you can fix some things. You can tweak your lineup. You can, encourage a kid like Stromer to be more aggressive in a game that it shouldn't be all that close. And you can tweak some things as you kind of get into the meat of your schedule. So, I think two things can be true. I think they're playing lower level competition and talent, but at the same time, they appear more connected defensively. There were some slip ups in the second half, but I think those have been fewer since that Pepperdine game. I think Portland, they were relatively dialed in. I thought against LMU, they were relatively dialed in. And particularly when it comes to switches, the pick and roll coverage, we've seen some mistakes in some big games in that non-conference that really hurt Gonzaga. I think we've seen a few of those. So, I'm not sure how much there is to talk about the LMU game other than, you just saw the difference in class between the two teams. And, Brian had another solid game after, kind of cleaning things up with the turnovers against Portland, 11 points, or 11 assists rather, to 2 turnovers, still struggling, 4 of 11 from the field. But Graham's been really, really good. I'm not sure Zags going to win Player of the Year since they're leaving the league, but certainly he's got to be the front runner for GU. And I was happy that Caleb's been good to start conference, and I was happy that Michael got to see the ball go in. If they can get him, if he can become a steady 10 and 8 game guy, that's huge. Because what's hard, I think, Jim, is as talented as Braden is, and as impactful as he can be, you do not know from night to night what Braden's going to do for you.
Well,
Right?
and a lot of them. I mean, Graham has, the up and down thing going sometimes. He's smoothed it out now, but
Right.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. All
Yeah,
down
just
the lineup.
right. But I mean, I think you generally know what you're going to get from Ryan. You generally know what you're going to get from Ben. Certainly, I'll grant you, Ike can have one of those games where you just don't understand. But I mean, if you back out those 4 games, his numbers are staggering. I mean, he's generally there. But all of them, you're right. That's a good point. All of them need to kind of, I think, find a baseline. I do think there's too much variance in what guys bring this staff night to night. But I'm wondering, I'm watching to see is Michael turning a corner. Had the great rebounding performance against Portland, saw the ball go in down at LMU. Can he do both of those things at a steady level moving forward? I think that'll be really helpful for GU.
The way those guys talk about him, the players and the coaches, he just sounds like the ideal teammate and never complains. Attitude's always great. I mean, Ben Gregg, talked about him like he's a family member. I mean, he just they do love the kid. I think effort and in practice, he's bringing it all the time. It just almost seems like just a matter of time before the dam breaks, and he's kind of getting back to where he was. And boy, if they got both those guys going with the rest of that lineup, that would be hard on opponents, especially in the conference. You're talking about 4 bigs that can really play if they can get them all going. And there's been times where that's happened, but if that happens on a consistent basis, that 3 ball starts dropping, they are not going to be a fun matchup for folks in conference and down the road. I will say one thing about LMU. That is a big, strong, old seniors, grad students. They look like 25, 26-year-old men out there. And I kind of wondered how the Zags would hold up to that. And Zags end up scoring it inside like crazy. I think they won the glass pretty well. Didn't get posted up all that often by the guards, the bigger guard.
Yeah, but you've heard this saying, right? Look like Tarzan, play like Jane. Have you heard that?
Oh, I've heard it.
Okay,
I've heard it.
and that's what LMU's bigs are, right? They look. I mean, they walk into the airport, you think you're going to get crushed, and then you realize, other than Porter, the skill level is really limited, and the feel is really limited, and that's one of the benefits Gonzaga has is not only having really good players, but also some of the stuff they're doing in the non-conferences. You're not worried about the look. Can you play? And it's a good example of it's just difficult to bring guys together in a short period of time. Because you're right. I mean, there are some guys there that you're like, that's pretty talented. I thought Stone Carrawell was good. I mean, you could see how he could be a really effective. Porter, I was listening to Dan and Greg on the call talking about, Porter was all this potential. And I thought to myself, hasn't he been in the league like 4 years? Like, I mean, I know I think he's a junior. Least, yeah. I think he's a junior. It's like at some point, it's not. The potential is not there. It's just this is who you are, and he's just a really inefficient scorer. And I'm not sure a guy that if he's a focal point of what you're trying to do is a guy that's going to help you win a lot of games. He'd be probably a really nice piece off the bench, but it just felt like LMU's pieces just didn't fit very well together to me, and didn't really know how to play together. Versus Gonzaga. They bring back as many of the guys they brought back, and they brought back pieces that work. And, there's a reason LMU is struggling the way that they're struggling, despite the way they might look in New Jersey.
Well, and they had hammered Oregon State, I think, the game before by 20. And I think with their size and just how they're going to bump you and thump you and use their physicalness. And I think Mark Few was a little worried about that, and afterward he's pretty pleased with how they stood up physically and took care of business down there. Let's move on. I will say Graham Ike was more forceful in that game than I've seen him in a long time. I mean, he's put up numbers, all year and last year as well. But he got rebounds in traffic. He went through contact. He had a play where he went under the rim and did a reverse. I was like, man, he was really on it. And one thing Few said afterwards is, if he's like that, we're different. I mean, if he controls that paint like that, and defensively, you could see it. He played well defensively. Finished through contact, to board in traffic. He's capable of that, but he really did it that night. If he stays in that mode, that is going to be a big deal for him.
It's I've had this thought now for a couple of weeks. There's one similarity only between Rony Churioff and Graham Ike. Is I think they're emotional. When Rony was dialed in and like emotionally in the right place and happy and joyful and excited to play, he's as good as Gonzaga's ever had.
Yeah.
But if he was in his feelings or upset about something, he would be terrible, And as he went further in his career, that variance really leveled out 100, right? I mean, he matured. Graham is certainly not. I'm not comparing Graham and saying he's in his feelings at all, but when he's when he's emoting, when you see him, animated right away, I feel like he always plays well. But when he comes out and he's a little bit more stoic and just kind of docile, it feels like he struggles. And that's just I don't have any empirical evidence to say that this is a fact but it's anecdotal. It feels like when he's animated and when he is visibly aggressive and enthusiastic about the plays he's making and his teammates, he's a beast. Yeah. But sometimes it feels like he starts some of these games and there isn't that juice, that pop, and I don't know, we're all human beings, right? I mean, I don't have the same level of juice this Monday morning that I did last Monday morning because I do have a puppy at the house, right? I got stuff going on. So, it happens. Even the best players of all time have had those, they're not the same every night. But I'm looking for that now every night that they play. In that first 2 minutes, what does Graham look like?
Yeah, no tiptoeing into the game. And I feel like sometimes he just kind of, needs some time to get into the game. I think he needs to come out and throw the first punch, so to speak, not actual punches. We've seen flagrant fouls. We don't need that. But he just took over in there against grown men. And I think that was a pretty good sign for Gonzaga. Moving ahead, week ahead, I think it's San Diego on Wednesday. Foxy, since Christmas, we had Christmas celebration on the day after Christmas because my daughter couldn't get home till the night of Christmas. And I cannot get the days down here. Then the Zags schedule with the 4 games in 8 days. It's Wednesday, right? You're working the USD game Wednesday?
Yep, I am.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping it's Wednesday. That's what I wrote down.
I believe it is. It is.
So the Toreros coming off an 81-54 loss to Oregon State. They were only down 5 at half, but things obviously kind of fell apart in the second half. They're 4-12, 1-2 in the conference. Do have a lot of guys back, but maybe guys that weren't in as big a roles as last year. They lost their point guard. You remember the McKinney kid went to San Diego State, who the Zags played down there. Big hole. I played a lot of young kids. Man, I looked at their roster. They got a lot of freshmen and sophomores. He plays Steve Lavin down there, one of the good guys, really fun guy to talk to. He's playing a lot of kids. I think he's kind of searching for combos and developing guys. But one name that obviously caught my eye, Colby Brooks is down there, the former Zag walk-on. Not playing a ton. He's played in 10 games, 64 minutes. So that'll be kind of interesting because he was here a couple of years
Yeah.
for the Zags, and obviously was he's a good player. Reminds me of some of the other ones that the Zags have had, the Matthew Langs, and when you watch him play, they could have played elsewhere in the WCC, and I know he's one of the kids who's doing that, getting some time. I think he's originally an LA kid, so sort of back home. But that game, I mean, just a quick thought. I obviously the Zags going to be heavily favored. They've had a little time to get back to a more normal schedule and prepare and get off their feet and all those things. Do you see any challenge there, or is this kind of a take care of business game for Gonzaga?
Yeah, I think it's a take care of business game.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly, there's a universe where San Diego can get going, but they've got one double-digit score in Bradley.
Yeah,
they kind of struggle across the board. I mean, they've got two other guys at a little over 9 points a game, and then it drops down to 6. To your point, a lot of turnover. It feels like the story of NIL, the transfer. Now with all the transfers, is either everyone's got a lot of new players, and you're either really young or you're really old. And I think this is a team that it's the horsepower, and especially being up here in Spokane, I'm not expecting it to be much of a contest.
I just saw the poll. I think the Zags were 18th. If I could read the smaller writing, I think they moved up one spot. The WCC just sent out Players of the Week. Malik Thomas again for San Francisco wins it. Zags over on the season.
I'm telling you right now, I'm calling it now. Unless somebody goes off for like 40, they're going to find a reason every week to go somebody else.
Well, I'm telling you, if Graham Ike and Ryan Nemhard at this point, I mean, the numbers Nemhard's put up are absurd, and Ike's in this 20-point, 27-point stretch.
They're going to find the coaches are going to find a way. Coaches are going to find a way.
Well, let's move on to the big showdown Saturday. This is going to be a fun one. Washington State visits Gonzaga, and Wazoo's off to a great start. I think they're unbeaten in league. The Zags are unbeaten in league. Wazoo took down San Francisco, which is a very nice team. Beat them 9 or 10 down in Pullman over the weekend. The Zags will have their student housing opening up Saturday. So all the students coming back for next semester should be the kennel being the kennel once again with the student section back in operation, especially for WSU down the road. The way the Cougars have played, and you give David Riley a ton of credit down there, lost his best player, Coward, injured. Mm-hmm. Lost 2 or 3 other guys for the year or long stretches. What they've done without their best guy is very impressive. And I saw them in a bracket when I checked this morning. They're 11 seed in the play-in. So just good stuff from what the Cougars have done thus far. And obviously, Gonzaga and Wazoo used to play. They cut that off many years ago. To be back in the conference, WSU is an affiliate of the WCC now. So I think there will be all kinds of anticipation, emotion, kind of the 509 game, people on the east side. That's going to be a good one. And the way the Cougars are playing, they score it very well. They're very smooth offensively. I think this is going to be a very interesting game to see how WSU responds inside the kennel. If we've got the full student section roaring, we'll see. And it'll be interesting. I think the start of that game is going to be very key. If it goes south for either one early, obviously it's not over, but I think a fast start could really either amp up the crowd, really deflate the Cougars, or vice versa if the Cougs get out and have a good opening 5 minutes. Initial thoughts on a Gonzaga Wazoo matchup that's gotten a lot more appealing with the way the Cougars are playing.
Yeah, I mean, looking at just the numbers, I watched their game against at Boise State where they won. I mean, it's a good team. I mean, it might. I'm only hesitating this. Are they the second best team in the league? I feel like St. Mary's has obviously had a good start to the year, even though they haven't played anybody in non-conference. Um, Look, this is a team that can really defend in WSU, second in the league, or the first in the league in blocks per game, second in the league in 3-point percentage defense. And then they're good with the ball. They're good offensively, second in assists, second in 3-point percentage, first in field goal percentage, and second best scoring offense. So, they have the firepower in a way most of these teams don't, I think, to score with Gonzaga. Um, they're not as good, and I don't think they have as much balance. But I mean, you look at it. I mean, shoot, they've got 5 guys in double digits, and obviously Coward, who was averaging 18 a game before he went out, was their leading scorer. But I mean, you've got what is it, Nate Calmes,
Yeah.
Calmes, Washington transfer. You've got Watts, who was from at Eastern. You've got Isaiah Watts, who I believe stayed, stuck around for Riley. I mean, you go down the list. I mean, they've got legitimate Division I basketball players, and Riley's a good coach. He's won at every level, and I think for a lot of us thinking about the way the Pac-12 dissolved before this new iteration, and with Oregon State and WSU kind of out in the wind, my expectation, even with Riley coming in, and I've got a lot of respect for him, knowing him a little bit with this time at Eastern, my expectation was that they were going to be god awful. I mean, they have been good. He's brought a lot of his guys from Eastern who know how he wants to play. Sprinkled in enough of the WSU guys and a transfer here too. But I expect that to be a good game. It's going to be interesting. The kennel's going to be live. I think that this Gonzaga team is going to love that. You and I are there, and a lot of our listeners go to these games, certainly. But for those that don't, it is remarkable the difference between a game when the students are there and when they're not there. And this is not, it's not a criticism of the folks that are there when the students are gone. Look, you can't recreate it. It's just such a different vibe. And I'll be interested to see. I think that's a really astute comment. What's the start of the game look like? It's a double-edged sword. If Gonzaga, that crowd, the students can lift you up and get you going immediately, or it can get you too ramped up where you stumble out of the gate because the juices are flowing so fast. And then for WSU, I mean, they've played on the road. They played in Nevada as well. I think they've got enough maturity about them. I don't think they're going to be overwhelmed by it. But for them, what they have to do is they have that first 5 minutes of each half. They have to weather whatever the storm is. They have to stay in the game. I mean, how many times have we seen that, particularly at home for Gonzaga, where in either one of those halves, that first 5 minutes, that's where they bake in that margin that kind of takes them home, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can play Gonzaga to a draw or even outscore them, but if you're down by 18 over one of those 5-minute stretches, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I think for WSU, they have to. They can't let go of the rope in the first 5 minutes of either half.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And excuse me, traveling good on the throat, Fox. I'm looking forward to the matchups. I mean, the point guard Calmes. I hope I'm saying that right. I should do my homework.
We'll learn it by Saturday.
Yeah, him and Ryan, that should be good. The Watts kid is very physical. Kind of looks like a Big East type physical forward. Who's he going to go with? Is it going to be Benny? Is Battle going to have to guard him? Depends on. Wazoo's they've got some taller, capable shooters, stretch guys too. And when you watch them play, and this is kind of in general, when you watch a team that's really cool to watch offensively, UConn do it totally different way. But Eastern plays with kind of a little bit like Gonzaga. They just play a lot of times. They're free flowing. They've got guys who can shoot it from the perimeter. There might be 6'9".
They've got the kid from Beaverton, Dane Erkstrup.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 6'11". Against the Dons, he shot 13 shots. 11 were from three. He was 5 of 11.
I mean, they can really make it hard on you to stop, and they put up numbers almost every game. I watched them play Boise State, I think, in a hotel room on the road. and it was down. It wasn't in Boise, but it might have been in
Yeah, I
Boise
think
Arena. But
yeah,
it was
yeah,
down there, and they took them apart in the first half. I think they were up 20 something,
they were.
and it got real tight at the end. But they held on. That's going to turn out to be a nice win for them. But the way they operate offensively is kind of enjoyable on the eye. A little bit like when Gonzaga's doing their thing. They just play off each other. It's not it's free flowing a little bit, and I think that's going to be interesting. But of all the matchups, and I think the EK matchup inside is going to be the one Wazoo has got to try to neutralize, because if he's playing the way he's been playing, probably going to be a long night for the Cougars. But the point guard matchup and the bigs inside, did anyone catch your eye of what you're really going to train
Well,
on?
this is
They're
the
all
W
going to be good.
Yeah, well, we're excited because this is a game that Gonzaga could lose.
Yeah.
Let's be honest with ourselves, right? It's like this is a real team, and this is a WSU team that shoots that much like Gonzaga. They defend the 3-point line well, but they shoot it better than Gonzaga does. So, I'm watching to see is WSU able to get going on the road from the 3-point line? And then while WSU has some size, no one in the league has the collection of those four guys Gonzaga does. And at home with the students there, what are they going to get? Are they going to get the rare night where EK and Huff are both good, right? And not just that here you take this half, I'll take this half. Like every minute that a center's on the floor for Gonzaga, they are punishing them on the low block. That rarely happens, it feels like. And then can Benny and Benny's going to keep doing what he does? Is he going to knock down a 3 or 2? And then are we going to see Michael starting continuing through Wednesday, obviously, but can he put together one of those performances where he's just solid all the way around? So to me, I think that's going to be the difference. Are Gonzaga's bigs, the collection of Gonzaga's bigs, able to overwhelm WSU's size up front and dominate in the paint and dominate on the glass? And can Gonzaga do enough defensively, which they've shown they can, to make it difficult for WSU to get clean looks from 3? Yeah. So from Gonzaga's perspective, that's how I'm thinking about this game right now. Obviously, we got almost a week going into it, but it's going to be fun. I mean, it's just, I had a friend of mine tell me, when Gonzaga was going to the Pac-12, he's a Coug. He was telling me, but a big Zag fan. He was telling me he was disappointed, and I thought to myself, well, why would you be disappointed? You get to be in the same league as Gonzaga, and he said because it's going to split this town in half. Is what he told me. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, hey, think about how many Coug fans have Gonzaga season tickets because Gonzaga's been good for this long. So I am fascinated to see, Jim, in the stands. What does it feel like? What does it feel like? Is it a proper home game for Gonzaga? Or are you going to have a lot of folks that bleed Gonzaga but are Cougs and can't help themselves for a night, and they're going to be wearing that crimson? I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll do a uni check in the crowd. I gotta believe it's going to be overwhelmingly Gonzaga, especially with that student section at full throat. Sure. But there will be some more pockets than usual for a visiting team in the McCarthy. We're looking forward to it. That's going to do it for this week. Foxy, always enjoy it. And Christy Burns, thank you as always for trying to make us look good. That's the toughest job on earth.
It's very difficult. I know.
You can catch us on all the outlets where you can find your podcasts. I will post this from the Spokesman-Review site and YouTube. I think we're on Apple Podcasts. So Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. Look it up. Tell your friends. Tune in. Foxy, I'll catch you Wednesday. We'll get another puppy update at that point. See how life is treating you then, how the pup is doing. And we'll catch you for the Dons on Wednesday, or the Toreros on Wednesday, the Cougs on Saturday. We'll recap it all next Monday. Thanks for joining us.